Welcome in, everybody. We'll get started here in just a few. Good to see you. Brad, Boston, Hiawatha, Jerry, Kelly, everyone else, welcome in. Good to see you, Stefan. Christine, what's up? That's awful. Good to see you, Chopper. All righty, let's get going. We have a lot to go through. I want to welcome everybody back to the Sleuth Intuition channel. I'm your host, Patrick Vallejos, coming to you live from Phoenix, Arizona. Good to see everybody. How you doing, Mustang? Chopper, you be safe out there. Yeah. Let's just say I had no clue just how dangerous Israel Keys was. It's almost as if he lived to kill, to be proficient at it, even better than his predecessors. He studied all the greats. Kind of like Rex Heuermann. He did his homework. So I think we're gonna learn a little bit about who Israel Keys is. We'll look into the confirmed victims, the cases that they're 100% sure they can tie to Israel Keys. There's 11 total that he's pretty much confessed to. And he planned on telling his story, but it became too much of a cat and mouse game between him and investigators, begging for the information, him coming up with excuses. We'll look into a strange suicide letter. What appears to be a confession or maybe even a covenant with the devil. He left basically 11 signatures, including one that I believe represents himself. So 11 skulls and one pentagram, upside down pentagram. I'm assuming that's the one that represents him. So we'll go into that as well. We'll play a few of his interview clips. We'll talk about the significance of the number 11 in the occult and in Satanism, which in my opinion, he's an obvious Satanist. And then some. We'll discuss the Currier sketch and why investigators seem to overlook it. I mean, they had no clue. They never even considered that the Currier case was a serial killer case. Didn't even consider it. Hiawatha has a question here. Wasn't there a deal between him and the prosecutor so that no info would get out for his daughter to see, and they failed in their part? Well, he was being unreasonable. And we'll get into his daughter and my opinions about the number 11. I think she plays a big role in that. To me, 11 represents like duality, Well, at least I think that's how he's viewing it. It's like he knows the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, but he chooses wrong and he chooses evil. It's like as above, so below, but he chose below. And through his eyes, there's a beauty there also. And the Bible talks about that as well, that there is beauty in darkness. Creation comes from darkness. So I think that's where his mind was going. And I think he is only responsible for 11. Well, at least in this, what I call his covenant with the devil. He picks 11 because of the duality. He picks 11 victims because that was all part of his plan. He meant to get caught, I believe, right after he committed the 11th murder. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper later on in the live stream. Also, some of the unsolved crimes that people have tried to tie to Israel Keys over the years. We can talk about that a little bit towards the end. The timeline, his bank robberies, like. But here, let's start here. So I put together that little slide just for visuals while I read. A lot of this is going to be articles, long-winded. So I did that for you visual folks. I'll start that over. All right, this was titled Serial Killer Israel Keys is thought to have murdered 11 people across the United States between 2001 and 2012. Welcome in Lorraine Perez. Steph, I wonder if he is familiar with runes. Well, I know for a moment he did live with a bunch of religious white supremacists. Like later on in his later youth, in his teenage years, I guess. Okay, who was Israel Keys? Serial killer Israel Keys is presumed to have killed 11 people between 2001 and 2012, though authorities have only definitively connected him to 3 murders. And we're going to focus mainly on those in detail. Though authorities have only definitively connected him to 3 murders, as calculating as he was cruel, Keys typically traveled to different locations to select victims of opportunity rather than target a specific demographic. So, makes it almost impossible to kind of pin it down on him, kind of like Mr. Brooks. You remember that? Where he tries to explain the importance of keeping it random. That reminds me of the movie also, Silence of the Lambs, right? They say like it was random on purpose, right? But why the first one? They didn't find the victim for 3 days. Because he held her down underwater. He took extra special care of the first victim. Why would he do that? Because he knew her. That type of stuff. He buried weapons and other supplies ahead of time and financed his actions by working as a contractor and robbing banks. His uncharacteristic behavior after killing 18-year-old Samantha Koenig in Alaska led to his arrest in March of 2012. His December 2012 death by suicide before he could stand trial left law enforcement with more questions than answers about his crimes. So remember, Israel Keys is 100% like a pure psychopath, and he was in control all the way to the end. And I think the only thing he cared about was his daughter. That's it. It was almost as if he could live vicariously through her a decent life, no matter what, she was part of him. And I think that plays big into the number 11 for him, which also could represent, I think, in his mind, duality, good and evil. Yep. Hiawatha says this dude was killing animals at a very young age. Very true. Good to see you, Boston. Anybody else I missed? Or Anna, good to see you. Another product right from here in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, he definitely targeted like the East and West Coast. He stayed away from the Midwest. So he did visit Arizona and Indiana. Good to see you, Frank, Brad. Welcome in, Daisy, James Tate. Hunting over a wide area. Yeah, he would travel. He would rob banks to finance his travel expenses. And then he would bury caches all over the country. Caches of like guns, knives, things, chemicals to dissolve bodies. The cache or the kill kit that he had buried is he buried it 2 years before he used it to murder the Currier family, a man and woman, married couple. Yeah, I thought that was strange too. I was trying to tie that into the number 11, so I don't know if there's something we're missing. There were 10 kids in the family, and they lived off grid in shacks. That's true. He built a cabin for the family when he was 16. Yep, we're going to read about that right now. Israel Keyes was born in Cove, Utah on January 7th, 1978, as the second of 10 children born to Heidi and John Jeffrey Keyes. The couple didn't believe in government interference, public schools, or modern medicine. Israel was 5 when his family left Utah for Colville, Washington. They lived isolated in the woods where Keyes grew up without heat or electricity. While in Washington, Keyes' parents left the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, became fundamentalist Christians, and joined a white supremacist church called the Ark. In the late 1990s, the family relocated to Maupin, Oregon. It was there that Keyes said he attacked his first victim. Though he didn't kill her, his family moved again, this time across the country, to settle close to Amish community in Maine. Growing up, Keyes broke into neighbors' homes to steal guns, loved hunting, pursued anything with a heartbeat, and tortured animals, behavior that has been linked to psychopathy. Years later, while in custody, Keyes said, "I've known since I was 14 that there were things that I thought were normal and that were okay, and nobody else seemed to think were normal and okay." So when he was 14, he did something. I'm thinking maybe he mutilated an animal and was showing it off to a group of people. Like, check this out. And they were just in utter dismay and disgust. But he was like, what the hell's going what's wrong with you guys? Like, this is totally cool. So he knows he can't do that in the open anymore. He's different. After a teenage Keyes told his family he no longer shared their faith, he was evicted from the family home, and his younger siblings were told never to speak to him again. Thank you, Miranda. Good to see you. All right, let's go into his military service. On July 9th, 1998, Keyes relocated to New York, where he enlisted in the U.S. Army. There, he served as a specialist in Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Infantry Regiment, before passing a rigorous U.S. Army Rangers training course. He was stationed at Fort Hood in Texas, Fort Lewis in Washington, and Sinai in Egypt. Although no crimes were reported during his time in Egypt, he did reportedly tell a fellow soldier that he would like to kill him. While at Fort Lewis, Keyes was known to keep to himself and drink heavily on weekends. He served on a mortar team in the 1st Battalion, 5th Infantry, 25th Infantry Division, and his only trouble with the law during the time came in February of 2001 when he received a DUI. See, he doesn't have some crazy criminal past where he's, blowing up on his siblings, um, getting hit with domestic violence or disorderly conducts, fleeing police or drug charges. He just had a simple DUI. Come to find out, he's one of the most notorious killers. Keyes received an Army Achievement Medal for his service as a gunner and assistant gunner from December 1998 to July 2001. After that, he was honorably discharged and settled on the Mackay Reservation of the Nia Bay in Nia Bay, Washington. Good to see you. Hope everybody had a good weekend. All right, let's talk a little bit about his daughter. In 2000, Keyes became involved with a woman living in the Washington Mackay Reservation. The next year, their daughter, whose name hasn't been made public, was born. In July 2001, Keyes went to live with the mother of his child after being honorably discharged from the Army. He worked for the Mackay Tribal Council in Nia Bay from 2001 to 2007. In 2007, Keyes moved to Alaska to live with a nurse practitioner he'd been dating and brought his daughter along with him. The same year, he started his own business, Keyes Construction, where he worked as a handyman, contractor, and construction worker. After his arrest, Keyes expressed his desire to prevent his daughter from suffering due to his actions. I want my kid to have a chance to grow up, She's in a safe place now. She's not going to see any of this. I want her to have a chance to grow up and not have all this hanging over her head. So in the interviews, he does complain a lot about that. He kind of he brings up true crime. He doesn't want her to get involved in like knowing what he did. But that's his fault. He shouldn't have done what he did. He was being unreasonable with investigators because he did not care. All he cared about, in my opinion, was this covenant that he made with Satan. He truly believed that he was going to a heaven-like place. Just not in the way we look at beauty, but he looked in the way he did, which was obviously disgusting and morbid to normal people. Okay, the murder of Samantha Koenig. On February 1st, 2012, Keyes abducted 18-year-old barista Samantha Koenig from the coffee shop where she worked in Anchorage, Alaska. He stole Koenig's debit card and cell phone, sexually assaulted her, and killed her the following day. Keyes then stashed her body in a shed while he went on a planned family vacation, a two-week cruise in the Gulf of Mexico. Upon returning, Keyes applied makeup to Koenig's face, sewed her eyes open with fishing line, and took a picture of her alongside a 4-day-old issue of the Anchorage Daily News to make it seem like she was still alive. Using her cell phone, Key sent texts including a demand for a $30,000 ransom. Her family, hoping Koenig was still alive, deposited money into her account. I believe it was like five grand. Then Keyes dismembered her body and dropped the pieces into a lake north of Anchorage. Koenig's remains were recovered on April 2nd, 2012. Although Koenig's wasn't Keyes' first victims, his crimes against her ultimately led to his downfall. And I think he meant to get caught. I think number 11, that's what he wanted, in my opinion. Other victims. Keyes is believed to have killed 11 people, of whom only Samantha Koenig and two others have been definitively identified. He's also sexually assaulted a girl who was between the ages of 14 and 18. According to Keyes, his first planned attack took place in Oregon in 1997 or 1998. He abducted a teenage girl, then raped her. He intended to murder her, but she convinced him to let her leave. I wasn't violent enough, Keyes later told investigators of the crime. I made up my mind. I was never going to let that happen again. So those were his fledgling attempts. As a serial killer, Keyes targeted victims who happened to cross his path rather than sticking to a specific profile. He often waited to access people in parks, cemeteries, or campgrounds. Not as much to choose from, in a manner of speaking. He confessed to law enforcement about his methods, but there's also no witnesses, really. There's no one else around. Plus, he wore disguises too all the time, especially during his bank robberies. Why not during his murders? Keyes also traveled to kill. In June 2011, he flew to Chicago before driving to Essex, Vermont, where he murdered Bill and Lorraine Currier. The couple was selected randomly as they fit Keyes' criteria of having no children, no dog, and a house with an attached garage. He broke into their home, subdued them, and then transported the pair to an abandoned farmhouse. Keyes killed Bill, then raped Lorraine before murdering her. Keyes claimed he took at least 5 other lives but never named these victims. Per his account, he killed 4 people in Washington state, a couple sometime between 2001 and 2005, as well as 2 separate victims in 2005 and 2006. Keyes also stated he murdered someone on the East Coast in 2009 and then left the body in New York State. The FBI is relatively confident that this victim was Deborah Feldman, a New Jersey resident who went missing in April of 2009. All right, let's look. So, what he did was he was telling law enforcement about his murders, but he was going in reverse. He was telling them about his latest victims first and going in reverse. And that's how he was going to do it. That's why I believe that once he killed Samantha Koenig, it was over. It was complete. Whatever he was doing was completed. And I think deep down, he planned to tell investigators everything. But he was just being, in their eyes, unreasonable. But I think that they should have given him everything that he wanted if it wasn't ridiculous. You know what I mean? And after watching all his interviews after being arrested, it seems like he was just frustrated about the communication and the lack thereof. And people releasing information, even if it was just rumor. He's like, I don't care if they're speculating. They're speculating based off of new information, is what I think he was trying to get across to them. Like anybody with the brain can tie 2 and 2 together, right? So if he's starting from his last victim and moving his way down 11, descending, I think we'll start with Samantha. All right. Samantha Koenig, 18, was abducted on February 1st, 2012. According to reports, the reward for her return reached $70,000 by February 28th, 2012. Welcome in, Candace. Was doing the renovation on a house next door. He came over to talk to me about doing my sunroom. He was very kind, but he did have a horrible odor. I almost vomited. He had Amish working for him. When I first met him, I began to panic with fear inside, and I didn't know why, as he was very nice, helpful, but I was panicked inside. Who's that? Who are you referring to? I thought the same thing, V, but I think I need to double check those dates. For some reason, I want to say 2013, but I could be wrong. A Rain Dancer. Welcome in, Audra. 2011. Okay. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I couldn't help but thinking about Bill and Peggy. I mean, it fits his MO, right? And him being a Satanist and there being pentagrams and things drawn. Yeah, I might need to look into that a little bit more, really. I'm glad you reminded me because I was going to go double check the dates. I was like, It's like, no way. I was like, why? I couldn't shake it. The Common Grounds Espresso Coffee Stand in Anchorage, Alaska, where barista Samantha Koenig disappeared on February 1st, 2012. And we'll watch the security footage of that. It's absolutely terrifying. Like, as a young woman, you can't just go work in a coffee shop without some serial killer dragging you out of there. He literally climbs through the window. Yep, V, all the satanic stuff for sure. Specifically the pentagrams. And we're talking about the Stevenson case. And V is confirmed it happened in 2011. He was definitely active. And we know he likes pentagrams. He left one under his mattress after he killed himself. Creepy. Audra, you've been at that espresso in Anchorage, Alaska. My ex-husband is from there. Oh, wow. It was, Israel Keys. But I didn't know it was him for years. He had a crew of men working the Reno on house next door that summer. Oh, that's creepy. Small world, huh? Investigators were monitoring Samantha Koenig's debit card and were alerted after an ATM withdrawal was made from her debit card in Shepherd, Texas. Israel Keys is seen here on surveillance with a hood, sunglasses, and face covering. Not only is he a serial killer, but he's a prolific bank robber. That's very interesting. The fact that Boston ran into him and you've been to that coffee shop just shows you how small of a world we actually live in. Israel Keys would often rent cars when he traveled and then drive thousands of miles to locations where he wanted to kill. He was driving a rented white Ford Focus when Texas officers pulled him over for a traffic infraction. After searching the vehicle, they found an ID, debit card, and cell phone that belonged to Samantha Koenig, and he was arrested. Israel Keys was questioned at the FBI's field office in Anchorage, Alaska. Keys confessed he murdered Samantha Koenig to members of the Anchorage Police Department, U.S. Attorney's Office, and FBI agents. The interviews from that confession have now been made public. Keys' home in Alaska, the Alaska home of Israel Keys, and the shed on the right where he killed Samantha. Divers at a Matanuska Lake in Alaska recovered Samantha Koenig's body on April 2nd, 2012. This is security footage of her abduction. I think this is about 11 minutes long. Looks like she's making coffee for somebody there. I don't know if that's him. I don't know if he's arrived yet. V says he's at the window first. So maybe he's placing his order. Right there. Look, her hands are up. So he pulled out a gun and he told her to shut off the lights. So it appears he's talking to her through the window. I think he was trying to convince her that it was just a robbery. And maybe it was going to be just a robbery, but I doubt that. Well, I can still see her standing up. She's standing up and she's talking to somebody. If you look at the top left corner, she's got her hands up, and you can kind of see Israel Keys. You can see his hands, and he's kind of moving them around, pointing them, telling her to do things. She's taking out the money from the register now. Yeah, I think the top left is going to be the best quality when it comes to those I don't know what the hell's going on with these bottom cameras. So now he has her kind of sitting on the ground. Yeah, what I should have done is isolated this one on the top left, the one they have marked as channel 1, enlarged it, and tried to improve it a little bit. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on right here. He's like still talking with her. I think he might even be convincing her to tie herself up. Okay, it's right at this point where he just crawls through the window. Now this is pretty scary. And then we'll move on. Okay, so he's climbing through the window now. He's inside of the coffee shop standing over her. He appears to be wearing a disguise. I don't know Boston. I think he started, doing construction after his daughter was born. I think he needed a cover, so I think that was just, something a way to convince his daughter that he was normal, because he really didn't get into construction and do all that until she was born. No worries. So you can't really see, it's too dark, but he takes Samantha Koenig, ties her up, forces her out of the coffee shop. I'm assuming there's a back door. He crawled in through this window here and forced her out the back. Then he threw her in the back of his truck. All right. Between 2001 and 2012, Keyes is known to have killed as many as 11 randomly chosen victims. Amidst the randomness that he mobilized to avoid attention, he had just one rule: never harm children or anyone with children, because he had a daughter too. He carried around murder kits that contained tools to help him execute each of his crimes he committed. He would bury these in the place of the crime before committing the crime itself. Based on his confession, Israel Keyes committed his first murder in 2001, followed by a double homicide of two more murders between 2001 and 2005. However, the identities and whereabouts of these victims are unknown. In 2007, after Keyes moved to Alaska with his family and started a construction company. See, so he already had his daughter and his family, right? He's probably trying to wear this family as a disguise, but it's not going to work. And I think it didn't work because later on he kind of freaked out and started cutting up all of his furniture, and his daughter kind of got freaked out by it. And then he was shortly arrested after that. Keyes moved to Alaska with his family and started a construction company. He began traveling to Washington and other states to commit murders. So I think that was a way of getting money without it being connected to him. And I almost feel like he was creating these characters and trying to make people think that they were isolated incidences, by certain individuals. He might steal a car, or somebody might be missing, and then I think he would even try to look like them or something, you know what I mean? I don't know. Who knows what the hell this guy was up to, but I think it was something very weird, especially once you see all these disguises and shit, very strange. In 2009, he reportedly abducted a girl from the East Coast and murdered her. He disposed of her body in upstate New York. His first well-verified murders involved victims identified as Bill, 49, and Lorraine Currier, 55. He broke into their home in Vermont, where he had previously stashed one of his kits, and abducted the couple. He drove them to a farmhouse and shot Bill before he sexually assaulted Lorraine and strangled her. The FBI found the weapons disposed of at the Blakes River Reservoir. Oh, yeah, this dude was pure evil. I have a theory that there's some people that are born without a soul and they just kind of walk around like a zombie, and something bad just comes inside and takes, hey, here's an empty vessel. So it's like that's why they feel so different. It's almost like maybe they are different, just pure evil. Psychopathy. Bill and Lorraine Currier. Bill and Lorraine Currier were chosen at random by Israel Keys and abducted from their Essex, Vermont home on June 8th, 2011. They were taken to a farmhouse and murdered. During an interview, this is the photograph that was handed to Israel Keys, and he says, "Well, are these the people that you're referring to?" And he said, "Yep, that's them." A photo of Bill and Lorraine Currier with yellow ribbon draped on a tree was posted outside of their home in Essex, Vermont. The photo was taken on December 29th, 2011, when the fate of the Curriers was still a mystery. And we're going to hear from law enforcement. I mean, these guys are fucking clueless. Like, I always try to support law enforcement. I want to be pro law enforcement. But sometimes we just have to accept the fact that in some of these cases, these people are just fucking retarded. Forgive my choice of words, but I mean it. I mean, we're talking, and I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed by any means. I'm happy if you said I had 110 IQ. I don't even, what is that? What does that even mean, right? But I mean, come on. Here, let me show you what I'm talking about.
When the killings occurred originally, what were your thoughts and investigators?
Can you guys hear that okay?
Whether it was a random.
So you have reporters asking the lead investigator before Israel Keys confessed, like, what were you thinking? Where were you going? Where was the investigation headed?
When the killings occurred originally, what were your thoughts and investigators' thoughts generally about whether it was a random or a targeted act, what the level of danger to the public was, and then I have a follow-up.
No, I think I understand your question a little more. I think the belief was it was an isolated incident.
What led to that belief?
Crickets.
All the circumstances that are as outlined in the affidavits, I would go with that. Is an abundance of information. There's 16 warrants. But certainly we did not believe at that time that there was a serial killer on the loose here in Vermont.
But it turns out there was.
No, well, for the next 24 hours, I believe, before he left the state.
And then came back through. I'm sorry, I had a follow-up to that. My follow-up was,
Fee says, sounds good.
Much progress at all did you have in the investigation between that time and when Keys started talking in Alaska? Did you begin to suspect this might be the work of a serial killer? Did you feel like you were an absolute dead end? Just talk about where you were from June 2011 to April 2012.
That's what we were trying to sort out. We just did not know.
So totally cold. You felt like you guys really
We,
had no idea.
well, going back in time, I believe we said at some point in the fall or late summer to early fall of 11 that foul play was suspected.
Did you hear what he just said? Oh yeah, well we didn't know it was a serial killer, but we did say that foul play was suspected. You know, we were the ones that did that. Well, no shit. The phone lines were cut, and two different doors were bashed in. What do you mean you suspected foul play? A fucking 2-year-old child stumbling across the scene would look at this and say this is foul play. He's taking credit for something that is Captain Obvious is what he is.
11 that foul play was suspected. We offered that information. Yes.
We offered that information. You know, we came to that conclusion.
No, nothing.
Okay, now let me show you the crime scene. If I have the videos. Oh, here we go. Here's one. Okay, so Israel Keys busted out this window right here. And then once he gained access to this area, he got a crowbar and busted through a secondary bedroom and then roughed up the Curriers in a fight and then abducted them both. And Captain Obvious over here, oh, well, we came to the determination that it was foul play. Look at the glass that's everywhere. And then they have something else marked. I'm not sure what that is. Unless that is the glass itself. Hiawatha says, Key spent time with the Curriers just like the assailant in the Stevenson case. I don't know. I don't think so. On the night of the abduction, Keys checked into the Handy Suites Hotel in Susie Wilson Road. The hotel in question is just a half a mile south of the former Currier residence. It would have taken him less than 10 minutes to walk between the two locations. So I wonder if he selected them and then selected the hotel, or if he selected the hotel and then went and kind of stalked, used it as an anchor point, kind of stalking in the nearby area. Audra, 100% police are just effing clueless. Yeah, what the hell? He's like, they said, well, why do you think it was isolated? He paused for like a minute. Just the totality of it all. Oh, okay. But one thing we did provide is that it was foul play. Like, no shit, dude. The entire place was in disarray. And there's glass on the floor. You have two people missing. And I think the vehicle was missing too. Like, what the fuck? Here's the other window. Investigators examined the broken glass at the Currier home in Essex, Vermont. And I think they found the crowbar that did it. Here's one of the, or this is the kill cache that he used to kill the Curriers. What Israel Keys called a kill cache is seen buried at the Blake Falls Reservoir in Adirondack Park in Parishville, New York. Adirondack? Keyes would bury caches with weapons and tools across the country. Whenever Keyes got the urge to kill, he would dig up a cache he had buried years prior and retrieve the murder weapons to commit his crimes. That looks like a drum magazine. That looks like it fits 22s. So this looks like a 22 rifle that you put together. That might even be a silencer or a makeshift silencer. And whatever's in this bag, maybe like a mask or something. But that looks like a rifle in pieces. You can kind of see where it connects right here. A Home Depot bucket filled with weapons and tools recovered from the Blake Falls Reservoir in Adirondack Park in Parrishville, New York. The FBI believe Keyes buried caches like this throughout the U.S. If a member of the public finds one, the FBI says do not touch it. Call the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. That's what people said about Rex Heuermann. They just got an uneasy feeling. He did abduct them, right? Yeah, he took them and tortured them, and yeah, he terrorized them. No, he did abduct them. About hanging out in the home, moving and staging stuff. Yeah, I don't know if he did that in any of the other cases, but like I said, these are the 11 that he's admitting to or he did for whatever purpose. Could there be others outside of it? I think so. But for whatever he did here, he had a plan. He was in control all the way to the end. He was just trying to have his cake and eat it too. Like, how is your daughter not going to find out that you're one of the most prolific serial killers of all time? Like, how are you going to keep that a secret? Let's see here. From the left, FBI Special Agents Catherine Nelson and Jolene Godin, and 48 Hours correspondent Peter Van Zant look at weapons recovered from Keyes' kill kits or caches at the FBI field office in Anchorage, Alaska. So it looks like they have the rifle kind of out and separated. Actually, these look like different rifles. I don't know what that is. That looks like a holster of some kind. Court documents say that investigators found indications of human decomposition in the basement of an old farmhouse while searching for a missing Essex couple in April. The Burlington Free Press reports that the disclosure was made by Essex Police Detective Lieutenant George Murdy in an affidavit filed in Vermont Superior Court where death certificates are being sought for Bill and Lorraine Currier. Murdy's statement also reveals that police believe the Curriers were taken in their car to the farmhouse and killed there by their abductor. Murdy wrote, the Essex police received this information from an FBI agent. The Curriers were last seen leaving for work on June 8, 2011. They were believed to have arrived home before 7 p.m. They were reported missing the next day when they failed to arrive at work. How a Vermont couple ended up in a serial killer's gruesome chain of carnage. This is by Maureen Callahan. In 2012, when authorities caught 34-year-old Israel Keys, a self employed carpenter in Anchorage, Alaska, he was suspected of only one murder, that of a barista near his home. But he was interviewed. The FBI suspected Keys was a serial killer because he picked his victims at random, thousands of miles away from where he lived. The Bureau's top criminal profilers quickly designated his crimes as unprecedented. Because I think in some cases, a lot of these serial killers, the fact that they're out there killing is because they can't control it. So if they can't control it, that means that they can't control their own patterns. In his case, it was different. In this second exclusive excerpt from American Predator, Viking author Maureen Callahan recounts the tense scene in the interrogation room as agents sought another confession. Days after confessing to the murder of 18-year-old Samantha Koenig in Alaska, Israel Keys, hoping to strike a deal with prosecutors, said he would confess to a recent cold case that would otherwise never be solved. One clear across the country. Keys had been two different people, he told them, for 14 years, traveling all over the U.S. for the sole purpose of killing. As he spoke, the FBI's case agents and behavioral analysts came to a terrifying realization: they had never encountered anyone like this before. A Google Earth map of Burlington, Vermont was pulled up, as Keys had with Samantha. He wanted to tell this story backward, starting with the end. Watching and listening from another room, FBI agents Jolene Godin and Kat Nelson Googled "missing couple Vermont" and found a picture of Bill and Lorraine Currier. The photo was taken outside under a tree. It looked like a picnic or a family gathering. They were middle-aged couple, both dressed casually, except for Lorraine's corsage and Bill's boutonniere. They were smiling, Bill's arm around Lorraine. They sent the picture to the prosecutor, Kevin Feldis. "Are those the two people you killed?" Feldis asked. Keith said, "Yup." "Had you ever met them before?" "Nope." "Had you run into them before?" "Nope." Let me pull that photo back up. So this is the photograph that he showed Keys. Nonchalantly, they ask, "Do you ever met them?" "Nope." He got off on the fact that it was so random. He got off, I think, the most when after he would break into their home and he was standing in front of them. That's what he got off on. Like that they just could not believe that there was a serial killer in their home assaulting them and probably going to kill them. He just that was his favorite thing. That moment right there was what it was all about. Oh, is that a thing, Boston? I know you have to bury your food if you're living off grid or out like he was, kind of in the wild. Not only to preserve it, but to keep it from other animals. On June 2nd, 2011, Keys flew from Anchorage to Seattle to Chicago, where he rented a car and began driving east. He was going to visit his brothers in Maine, he said, but along the way he stopped in Indiana for a couple of days. Then at an old farmhouse he owned in upstate New York. then on to Burlington before reaching his final destination. So that's strange that he talks about going to Indiana in June of 2011, and that's like Kentucky and Indiana are bordered. As Keyes approached this part of the story, he became physically excited, bobbing his knees, jangling his shackles, rubbing against his armchair so that he scraped a layer of wood clean off. This would become another tell. His signature expression of sexual excitement. It would be the way investigators knew there was much truth to his story, or stories. That night, Keyes waited until the sun went down, then left his hotel on foot. He carried a backpack of supplies, some brought from home. He'd unearthed other supplies earlier that afternoon from a cache he'd buried in Vermont 2 years before. He's using weapons that he buried in a state he doesn't even live in to use them 2 years in the future for a murder. Telling you, there's a rhyme and a reason to this. We don't know it, but he does. Several years back, he said he had taken a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket and filled it with zip ties, ammunition, guns, and silencers, duct tape, plus Drano to accelerate human decomposition, things like that, and buried it there. He had more buried all over the country. He'd get to that detail later, maybe. Keyes wandered around Burlington, his cell phone off, battery out. A little after midnight, randomly he found himself looking at the house at 8 Colbert Street. His years of experience in construction told him this was a simple plan ranch. He approached, crept around, found the phone line, and cut it. No alarm system. So typically, I don't know if it's that way now, but I know for some alarms, if you cut the phone cord, the phone cable, that's what connects the alarm, and it'll sound off if that happens. So I think that's his way of finding out if there's an alarm. You cut the phone cable, and if there's an alarm, it'll go off instantly. He's got the sense an older couple lived here, which for him was good because he had an idea, one that required a woman. There was an above-ground pool and a barbecue in the backyard, no toys or floaties, no sign of children or pets. Keyes was dressed head to toe in black. Strapped to his skull was an unlit headlamp. He broke in through the attached garage and, rifling through the green Saturn sedan parked inside, found himself in the kitchen. The whole thing took 6 seconds. A blitz attack, he called it. At first, Keyes said, Bill and Lorraine didn't understand what was happening. It took a few seconds for them to fully wake and realize this wasn't a nightmare. A large masked man with a gun, a total stranger, was really in their bedroom. Lorraine had been sleeping in a t-shirt, shorts, Keyes said, but he took lingerie from her dresser drawer. Did he make her change clothes? I don't know if I want to go into that, Keyes said. Keyes ordered Bill and Lorraine to roll over on the bed, on their stomachs, and zip-tied their wrists while barraging them with questions. Do you have a safe? Guns? Prescription drugs? Where's your jewelry? ATM card? He demanded their PIN number and scratched it into the card's surface, then grabbed 2 suitcases and began stuffing them with clothes and personal effects. After 15 minutes, he told them they were all leaving the house. He interrupted his story to brag a little. He never left physical evidence behind, ever. It was a point of pride. I seriously doubt you're going to find DNA or fingerprints anywhere, Keyes said. He marched the Curriers out of the garage, putting Lorraine into the front passenger seat, hands still zip-tied behind her back, and belted her in. He restrained Bill the same way in the back passenger seat, then slowly drove the Saturn out of the garage. So let me pause this, because there is a moment during an interview where they tell him that they did find evidence. Let's watch that.
Yeah, that was so like walking up on it, you couldn't see it. we got a report, we got all this stuff, sent it into the lab, so we do with everything that we get, and, on the tray that holds the ammo in there, there's a perfect right thumbprint.
Yeah, right.
No, there is. I don't have the lab report back.
Wow. Uh-oh.
More CSI stuff.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Well, I'm disappointed in myself mostly, but I'm excited.
The lab.
So yeah, he was kind of like, oh shit. He was really upset with himself about that one. He marched the couriers out to the garage, putting Lorraine into the front passenger seat, hands still zip tied behind her back, and belted her in. He restrained Bill the same way in the back passenger seat, then slowly drove the Saturn out of the garage. They begged. Bill needed his medicine. They had no money. If he just let them go, he could take the car, a little cash they had, everything. They'd never tell a soul. Oh, don't worry, Keys told them. This is just a kidnapping for ransom. I'm bringing you to a drop house. Other people will take it from there. You'll be fine. Yeah, that's always bullshit. Every case that we cover with these sadistic psycho killers, they all say the same thing. Oh, I just give them a story so that they'll stop fussing and fighting. You know, anything that they'll buy, knowing that it's not true. It was around 4 a.m., quiet and dark, the road and sky horizonless when Keys pulled up to an abandoned farmhouse off Route 15. That had been the reason for his drive earlier that day, to look at houses for just this moment. See, he's very planned, methodical, proactive. The house he'd settled on had a for sale sign staked in the brown grass. I always stop at empty houses, Keys said, especially if they have for sale signs. Keys cut the lights and ignition, leaving Lorraine tied in the front seat. He forced Bill through the basement's outdoor entrance and down the stairs. Tying him to a stool within minutes, impassively, Keys walked up and outside. There was Lorraine out of the car, standing up. She saw him. She ran as fast as she could toward the main road, but Keys was faster. He tackled her and dragged her back to the house, pushing her up the stairs and into the bedroom. He strapped Lorraine's arms and legs to the bed with duct tape and wrapped a rope around her neck and under the mattress, tying it off with a compound knot. She fought the whole time. Shouts came from the basement, echoing through the house. Where's my wife? Where's my wife? Keys checked his knots, secure. He grabbed a knife, his .40 caliber revolver, and his water bottle. He went down to the basement. Why the water bottle? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I want to get into that. Keys said. I don't know. I think maybe he used it as a silencer. Bill was partway free, the stool in pieces. The only light came from Keys' headlamp, the sight of Bill thrashing around as if under a strobe light. That pissed me off, Keys said, because there's a very specific way I want things done, and I have the whole thing planned out. I have everything I need to do it. What were his plans for Bill? I'm not going to say what I was going to do to him. Investigators didn't need to hear it. They knew Keys had planned to rape Bill too. And so when somebody messes up that plan, it kind of surprised even me, Keys said, that I lost control that way. He hit Bill with the shovel he'd found in the basement, but Bill didn't go down. It took at least one more hit to knock him to the floor. Keys ran upstairs. The propane stove he had set up had fallen through a hole in the bedroom floor. He panicked. The house was dry wood. It wouldn't take much for it to flame up fast. Incredibly, downstairs, Bill was back up on his feet and yelling. Keys ran back, he said. He just started firing like a reflex, shooting Bill in the arms, head, neck, and chest. Bill Currier was still standing. Keys had never seen anything like it. Then, with his last breath, Bill fell to the floor. Keys went back upstairs to Lorraine. He lifted some of the freestanding doors and covered the bedroom windows, which faced the road. I feel like Bill was being powered for his love for his wife. Like he didn't care, he wasn't concerned. It was pure adrenaline, and you were going to have to force him to his feet. He wasn't going to lay down willingly. Keyes went back upstairs to Lorraine. He lifted some of the freestanding doors and covered the bedroom windows, which faced the road. Then he boiled water on the propane stove. What was that for? Keyes chuckled. I don't know if I want to get into that today, he said. He cut off Lorraine's clothes with his knife. Lorraine still fighting. He raped her twice. Then he brought her down to the basement where he sat her on a bench and presented his final scene. Her husband shot to death, lying in his own blood. There was so much blood, Key said. That wasn't a mistake he usually made. He put on a pair of leather batting gloves. Then he stood behind Lorraine and strangled her with a rope. Even after he felt the life go out of her, he needed to make sure. This couple was tougher than Keyes could have imagined. He wrapped a zip tie around Lorraine's neck and pulled. Nothing. Keyes was running out of time now. He dragged Lorraine's body over to Bill's and cut off their restraints. He poured Drano over their hands and faces, bagged each of their bodies in two 55-gallon trash bags, then rolled their remains over to the basement southeast corner, piling garbage and wood on top. He was in such a rush. He left all the shell casings on the basement floor. The sun was up, people traveling Route 15 on their way to work. He had planned to burn the house with their bodies inside, but it was too late. Not really a problem. He was sure that whoever eventually bought the house would do it for the property and tear down or torch it. The smell from the basement would be so putrid, it would keep the most curious at bay. Plus, the likely assumption would be that a wild animal wandered in and died. No, he was not worried about anyone finding the remains. Keyes grabbed most of his stuff and drove the courier's car to a nearby Rite Aid parking lot, where he left his own rental the night before. He left the green Saturn as far from surveillance cameras as he could and walked to his car, head down and covered with a hoodie. Keyes got in and left the state, headed up to Maine. So here's the sketch right here. Somebody said, "Hey, it may be something, it may be nothing." The same cops that we were kind of making fun of that said, "Oh, well, we were the ones that found out it wasn't that it was foul play." Well, these are the same geniuses that refused to accept that this was a sketch of Israel Keyes. They didn't take it seriously. Somebody came and reported, "We saw this guy in what I thought was the courier's vehicle just a few days ago." They said, "Oh, well, the sketch looks like a lot of people." Yeah, when you put these side by side. But what about Israel Keyes and his little disguises? Can't be so dismissive, in my opinion. Yeah, we're gonna have to come back to that. What I want to do, V, what I have planned is to go over kind of like in a part 2 of all of his other suspected victims. A lot of people bring up Lawrence Spear. There's a couple of other too. There's a handful that now I think we can include the Stevenson case. Very strange. 6 hours start to finish, and no one suspected a thing. The FBI never found the courier's remains. The house had indeed been torn down. So this was before they were found. The bodies unwittingly excavated and dumped in the local landfill. If Keyes hadn't confessed, they never would have solved that crime, let alone have had any idea what happened to the couriers, who to neighbors and law enforcement had simply vanished one dark night. For the FBI, this horrifying story established Keyes as a new kind of monster, one they would come to suspect, responsible for the greatest string of missing persons and unsolved murders in modern American history. How many other victims would they find?
Well, it's one of the most disturbing murder cases in Vermont history. Bill and Lorraine Currier were abducted from their Essex home in 2011.
For months, there was no trace of them. Then, cross-country serial killer Israel Keyes confessed to the crime, and detectives finally knew all the details. News Channel 5's Bridget Shanahan joins us with this Focus 5 investigation. Bridget.
Well, Stephanie, Essex Police Lieutenant George Murdy was the lead detective on the case, and he's telling a story to News Channel 5. From the frustration behind hundreds of dead-end leads of a seemingly unsolvable case to the moment Keyes confessed and a deadly mystery was finally solved.
It was certainly on my mind every day for most of the day.
From the moment the missing persons report was filed for 49-year-old Bill and 55-year-old Lorraine Currier, Lieutenant George Murdy knew this case was different. There was no trace of the couple in the days after their disappearance in June of 2011. No phone records, no credit card activity. They were just gone.
When did you realize that they weren't alive, that they weren't going to be coming back?
Fairly early on. It was my personal opinion that they had been abducted and killed.
But it would be nearly a year until the detective learned exactly how.
The chances would be extremely remote that we would have ever solved this.
Murdy and his officers investigated several hundred leads, some of them more than once, searching several sites throughout the Essex community. One of those tips? A man thought he spotted somebody driving the courier's vehicle the day after they disappeared.
Investigators met with this person, asked him if he thought he could come up with a composite sketch of the person that was driving the vehicle.
But later, police quit using that sketch. They now believe that the source who had provided it was unreliable. What's interesting is if you put it up next to this Keyes mugshot, there's definitely a lot of similarities. Still, police say that those visual connections are just a coincidence.
This is a composite. Yeah, it looks a lot like Keyes, but it looks a lot like a lot of people too.
Then, after nearly 10 months of looking and still nothing.
I think it was right around dinner time. I mentioned to my wife, I said, I don't think we're ever going to solve this case. And 15 minutes later, the phone rang.
That's
and
the attitude.
It was Agent Michelle Delfa from the FBI who told me that they had a suspect in custody in Alaska who had confessed to killing the couriers.
News Channel 5 was given access to 11 binders full of reports, notes, and other police information related to their disappearance.
11.
There's no one who knows me or who has ever known me.
We now know confessed serial killer Israel Keyes broke in through a garage window, and then, using the courier's crowbar, he broke through a kitchen window and slipped inside. Police snapped dozens of pictures recording the
That might be
interior
foul
of the courier's
play.
lives. They took video of their home and car, painting the picture of lives simply stopped and offering few clues to investigators. Keyes later admitted to picking their home based on its layout, a single ranch with an attached garage, walking from the handy suites in the rain with a gun to abduct the couple inside.
It was sort of evil on a level I had never encountered before.
Coming up in just a few minutes on News Channel 5 at 6, we're going to take you out with Lieutenant Murdy through several of the locations Keyes visited in Essex, and we talk with him about why.
Yeah, definitely V. Yeah, there's not words for it. Yeah, it's just pure evil. Yep, and we're going to get into that right now. Before we get into the suicide letter, let's touch on the Julie Harris and the connection to Israel Keys. Julie Harris was 12 years old when she disappeared from Colville, Washington on March 3rd, 1996. She was a double amputee whose prosthetic feet were found by the Colville River a month after her disappearance. Israel Keys, then 18, lived in the area at the time. Julie's murder is still unsolved. Somebody reported that a man was driving the courier's vehicle, and he helped law enforcement by helping them with a sketch. But later on, they found him to be unreliable. And then after Israel Keys confessed to killing the couriers, they did a side by side between the sketch and Keys, and there was a great resemblance. She was a cute kid. On March 3rd, 1996, 12-year-old Julie Harris vanished while walking to church. Her prosthetic feet and bag were found near the river a few weeks later. By the following year, her remains were also recovered. Whoever abducted and murdered the little girl has gotten away with it for 25 years. Julie's mother, Sherry Odegaard, says her daughter was taken while trying to do what she loved. She loved God. She went to church all the time, she said. And that's what she was doing the day this happened. Sherry says Julie was a funny kid and a bit of a prankster. She was very involved in Special Olympics. She recalls the final conversation with her daughter being a stern one. She had to come down on Julie because of her poor grades. When I told her she could do Special Olympics skiing, I told her she needed to keep her grades up, she said. That was the deal. She'd had F's, so she couldn't go. But Sherry said Julie's brother, who was also involved in Special Olympics, was able to go on the ski trip. She went with him, and Julie was angry to be left behind. She vanished the next morning. March 3rd, Sherry said. She always waited. The people up the road would take her to church. Her brother wasn't going to go, obviously, because we were on the trip. Julie got up, got ready like normal, and no one ever saw her again. Sherry's former live-in boyfriend was among the final people to see her alive, she says. He too was apparently on Julie about her grades before she disappeared for years. Sherry said that former boyfriend has remained on police radar for this, but she's never suspected he'd had anything to do with Julie's murder. So another case they're just not sure of. So here are basically the 11 cases that they're working. And you can kind of count them down. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 8, 9, 10, and 11. Unless that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And they have the sketch right here. They put sunglasses on them. Wait, that's a different sketch, huh? This one only has like stubble. Looks kind of like Ted Bundy. All right, I'm just pulling some information up. Bear with me a moment. Okay. So Israel Keys committed suicide. I think he left a 4-page letter. We're going to read that. But he also left this. It's a total of 12. And these appear to be signatures, right? All in his own blood. And representing the 11 murders that he basically confessed to these investigators, like, yes, there's 11 victims. I'll go ahead and explain these to you, and I'm going to start from the last, and then I'll work my way down. But for whatever reasons, the communication between Israel Keys and investigators broke down. And I think it had a lot to do with his daughter and rumors and information being leaked to her or being leaked to the media. Now, I believe this one right here represents Keys. This is his pact with the devil. So, in his covenant, in blood, and also he has one here that says, "We are one." I don't know. I think that's what it says. I can't really tell because the corner's folded back. But it looks like we are one. So 11 skulls for 11 victims. All of them have like an upside down cross. Goat head, upside down cross. You know, like the Baphomet. And then the number 11, like Aleister Crowley. And like the Stevenson case, the upside down pentagram. So it's obviously satanic. And this is what his suicide letter said. Well, actually, let me catch up on the chat real quick. Hey, Angela. Good to see you. Yep, that's an old one. Yeah, he would have been 18 at the time, Brad. Yeah, little cherub face. Those cheeks. I don't know if he was abused, Angela. In everything that I've gotten my hands on, there's no talk of it. He was raised, I mean, in today's terms, yeah, it would be child abuse, you know, no electricity, no real running water, living out in the woods, no school, everything was homeschooled. At one point, he lived with like a white supremacist religious cult. So I guess there's many types of child abuse. Yes, that is correct. Yep, we touched on that. I don't know if he was an arsonist. He could have done it all. Oh, we are one. Oh, I didn't even think about that, Brad. He ate him, huh? I think you might be right. It's like that movie, Fried Green Tomatoes. We are one. Yeah, that makes sense. He put that right on the bottom of this one. I think that's possible, Boston. These might just be like the 11 that he wanted to admit to, 11 that he was some kind of a ritual he was doing, I think. Something based on the number 11, duality, as above, so below. Tawanda. All right, let's read this letter here. It's kind of long winded. So he writes, "Where will you go? You clever little worm. If you bleed, your host dry. Back in your ride, the night is still young. Street lights push back the black, the neat rows. Off to the right, a graveyard appears. Lines of stones, bodies molder below. Turn away quick. Bob your head to the seat. As straight through that stop sign you roll, loaded truck with lights off slams into your broadside. Your flesh smashed as metal explodes. You may have been free. You loved living your lie. Fate had its own scheme, crushed like a bug, you still die. Soon, now you'll join those ranks of dead, or your ashes the wind will soon blow. Family and friends will shed a few tears, pretend it's off to heaven you go. But the reality is you were just bones and meat, and with your brain died also your soul. Send the dying to wait for their death in the comfort of retirement homes. Quietly, quickly say it's for the best. It's best for you, so their fate you'll not know. Turn a blind eye back to the screen. Soak in your reality shows. Stand in front of your mirror and your preen in a plastic castle you'll call home. Land of the free, land of the lie, land of scheme, Americanize. Consume what you don't need, stars you idolize. Pursue what you admit is a dream, then it's American die. Get in your big car so you can get to work fast. On roads made of dinosaur bones, punch in on the clock and sit on your ass, playing stupid ass games on your phone. Paper on your wall says you got smarts. The test that you took told you so, but you would still crawl like a vermin you are once your precious power grid's blown. Land of the free, land of the lie, land of the scheme, Americanize. Now that I have you held tight, I will tell you a story. Speak soft in your ear so you know it's true. You're my love at first sight, and though you're scared to be near me, my words penetrate your thoughts now, an intimate prelude. I looked in your eyes, they were so dark, warm and trusting, as though you had not a worry or care. The more guileless the game, the better potential to fill up those pools with your fear. Your face framed in dark curls like a portrait. The sun shone through highlights of red. What color, I wonder, and how straight will it turn, plastered back with the sweat of your blood? Your wet lips were a promise of a secret unspoken, nervous laugh as it burst like a pulse of blood from your throat. There will be no more laughter here. I feel your body tense up, my hand now on your shoulder. Your eyes forgot the lady called Lux. She does not abide near me, for her powers don't extend to those who are dead. Illegible words. Would that I could keep you, let you be the master of your own fate. knowing full well what's at stake. My pretty captive butterfly, colorful wings, my hand smears. Somehow repaint them with punishment and tears. Violent metamorphosis, emerge my dark moth princess. I would come often and worship on the altar of your flesh. You shudder with revulsion and try to shrink far from me. I'll have you tied down and begging to become my Stockholm sweetie. Okay, talk is over. Words are placid and weak. Back it with action or it all comes off cheap. Watch close while I work now. Feel the electric shock of my touch. Open your trembling flower or your petals I'll crush. And then he was no more. Okay, so let's take a look at, he's obviously into the occult, so we'll look at it through that lens. Let's see here. The 11 Satanic Rules of the Earth by Anton Zandor LaVey. 1. Do not give opinions or advice unless you are asked. Number 2. Do not tell your troubles to others unless you are sure they want to hear them. 3. When in another's lair, show him respect or else do not go there. Number 4. If a guest in your lair annoys you, the fuck is with this lair? Treat him cruelly and without mercy. Number 5. Do not make sexual advances unless you are given the mating signal. The fuck? 6. Do not take that which does not belong to you unless it is a burden to the other person. He cries out to be relieved. Number 7. Acknowledge the power of magic if you have employed it successfully to obtain your desires. If you deny the power of magic after having called upon it with success, you will lose all you have obtained. Number 8. Do not complain about anything to which you need not subject yourself. Number 9. Do not harm little children. Right? Doesn't that one sound familiar? Number 9. Do not harm little children. Number 10. Do not kill non-human animals unless you are attacked or for your food. When walking in open territory, bother no one. If someone bothers you, ask him to stop. If he does not stop, destroy him. Let's see here. The number 11 is often considered to have symbolic significance in the occult world for a few key reasons. Here's 5. Number 1, it is a prime number, which are sometimes seen as holding mystical or spiritual properties in occult beliefs. Prime numbers are seen as fundamental and indivisible, giving them a sense of purity. Number 2, in numerology, 11 is considered a master number. Numbers like 11, 22, 33 are thought to hold greater spiritual power and potential than other numbers. 11 is associated with intuition, insight, and higher consciousness. Number 3, in some occult traditions, 11 is seen as a number of transition, duality. See, this is the one that I think fits mostly here, is the whole duality and spiritual enlightenment. It represents the bridge between the physical and the spiritual, combining the material and immaterial realms. I think that's the one right there. Number 4, there are 11 Sephiroth and emanations on the Kabbalistic tree of life, which is a central mystical diagram in Jewish historicism. This makes 11 a significant number in Kabbalah. Number 5, and this is Aleister Crowley. In Thelemic magic founded by Aleister Crowley, the number 11 is sacred and represents the forces of creation and transformation. It is seen as the number of power, creativity, and spiritual awakening. Let's see here. 11, sandwiched between two auspicious and important numbers 10 and 12. The number 11 generally has negative connotations. Bungus stated that 11 has no connection with the divine. The medieval theology refers to the 11 heads of error, because at any time of the 12 zodiacal signs is hidden behind the sun, the number 11 is often associated with the zodiac. The darkness. In contrast to 22, 11 represents darkness. The 11th hour is the time of strongest darkness, leading into midnight. In Genesis 1:1, God created the world in darkness, which is then described in the next verse. Now, on the one hand, this may appear very negative and forbidding. Darkness is not all bad, however. Eve was created for Adam during the night. We experience the healing and restoration of sleep at night. Romance and intimacy between couples occurs more in the evening time than the day. The blackest and darkest soil is always the most fertile for any farmer. It signifies the presence of decaying organic matter. Think of the mother's womb. It is entirely dark, but the place of growth. Sleep, the same principle as a seed being buried underground. The seed can only grow if it's buried in darkness, and that's true in most cases. Not always. People were healed when the darkness of Apostle Paul's shadow passed across them. Darkness is the canvas of God's creation. See here, numbers, their occult power and mystic virtues. 11. This seems to have been the type of a number with an evil reputation among all people. The Kabbalists contrasted it with the perfection of the Decad. And just as the Sephirotic number is the form of all good things, so 11 is the essence of all that is sinful, harmful, and imperfect.
I'm trying to remember what's in it. Do you want them to line? Do you want them to line it up? That's the thing. We can't make the decision that day because they won't have time to. Yeah, they won't have time to line it up.
You think about it over the weekend? Yeah. But if you think about it over the weekend or something.
Yeah.
If there's anything you want, like,
Can you give me like an hour on the internet, maybe?
Sure.
That laugh.
You want an hour of
You do a little research. I'm gonna info blackout for too long.
I'm trying to remember what's in it.
Do you want them to line? Do you want them to line it up? That's the thing. We can't be.
All right, guys, that is going to do it. We are going to wrap this up. I appreciate everybody who was here catching the live stream. If you are part of the replay crew, please let me know what you thought of today's live stream, the information that was provided. Make sure you like and share if you could. And we will get together again real soon. Definitely tomorrow, maybe a little bit later. Having some issues with my video studio, so I can't edit anything right now. I'm trying to fix that. And then I'll show you guys some of the drone footage. So I'll see you again soon. Take care.